Hi there, and welcome to our Tech Talk. This time, our IT edition today is focused on leveling up ITSI with machine learning. Now, for those of you who don't know, Tech Talks are a series of short webinars that are deep dives for technical practitioners. And we're hoping that you, our customers, can extract more value from your Splunk instance by attending these sessions. We try and create them around best practices, and we're hoping that you'll be able to leverage them in your daily role. My name's Greg Ainsley-Malik. I'm a machine learning architect at Splunk, and I'll be taking you through the content in today's Tech Talk. I'd like to take you through a few areas around predicting and triaging operational IT issues. And really the focus here is how you can use Splunk, ITSI and the machine learning toolkit to try and get on top of potential outages. I'm going to take you through a demo of the Smart ITSI Insights app. And then I'm going to mention a few additional resources that you can use to extract even more value from your ITSI instances. The genesis of this work has come from questions that I often get asked by customers. We have a wide range of machine learning enabled capability across our ITSI product. But often customers can struggle to operationalize them in a way that truly allows them to extract value from their instance. Typical questions I see are, what algorithm should I pick for generating the predictive health score? Or how can I most effectively group my alerts into episodes? And once I have those episodes, how can I identify root cause more easily using your products? So I'm going to take you through a few examples there. And if we look at the first one, predicting outages. So the predictive health score functionality in ITSI is a powerful way of predicting potential outage conditions. But it can sometimes be quite difficult to use. You look at the way it's been built, you need to pick the algorithm, you need to be able to interpret the results around the performance of that algorithm. And quite often when I speak to users and administrators of ITSI, they don't necessarily have the background in data science to be able to make those selections or interpret those results. So what we've tried to build in the Smart ITSI Insights app for Splunk is a guided workflow that takes you through the process of generating a predictive model without having to be a data scientist. So it will recommend whether or not your data is suitable for prediction. It will recommend the data sources that it thinks you should use to make that prediction. And then it will recommend an algorithm to you based on the performance of several algorithms that would be the best one to run in production. And it will try and do all of that in plain English. So I won't expect you to have a master's in machine learning. The second area that we sometimes come across is customers trying to use smart mode. And while this can be a great way of generating episodes from your event data, there are certain situations where the logic in the algorithm can cause some events to be missed or potentially not prioritized. So a super simple example, if you have a third-party solution such as TrueSight, as I've got up here, sat in between Splunk and some of your sources, and you have other data sources coming directly into Splunk, because Smart Mode focuses on high frequency features in your alerts, sometimes the sources that have been passed through that third-party solution will get lost in some of the event grouping, or perhaps not prioritized in some of the event grouping. So again, what we've tried to do in the Smart ITSI Insights app, and I'll take you through this more during the demo, is run some machine learning to enrich our alert data and then use those enriched labels to generate your episodes, but not necessarily having them define the episodes. That's what happens with Smart Mode today. The final piece we'll be looking at is around root cause analysis. So again, a typical situation that I come across is customers looking at episodes, trying to work out what happened, trying to work out key features that have caused that episode to happen. And what we try to do in the Smart ITSI Insights app is provide you with an automated way of identifying the KPIs that have had the biggest contribution to that service health score over the period of that episode, which should allow you to do some automated root cause analysis. And again, I'll take you through that in a bit more detail. So without any further ado, I will take you through a demo of the Smart ITSI Insights app for Splunk, where I'll be taking you through those 3 use cases. So the first bit of functionality that I'd like to take you through in the app is around the Predictive Analytics workflow. So this is intended to augment some of the predictive analytics that you can do in ITSI today, but wrapping it up in a more automated fashion and making some recommendations to you. The starting point is pretty much the same as in ITSI. Select the service that you're interested in. In this case, we're going to go for Buttercup Stores. And once you've selected that service, you can start to get a bit of a feel for how predictable that particular service is. So here you can see how often it's running in a degraded capacity, what percentage of time that looks like, how often it has quite a large drop in the health score, and also whether there are any outliers. Again, this is all trying to give you a feel for the predictability of this service. The fact it's so low suggests to me that maybe there's a misconfiguration or it's under duress at the moment. We can also compare it to some of the other KPIs that it relies on, and you can maybe start to see a bit of correlation between a degradation and some of the other KPIs that it relies on. But to prove that a bit more empirically, we've got a piece of correlation analysis that we will do that will compare all of the KPIs that your service depends on with the future health score. And at this point, essentially, we're making an assessment over 2 things. Firstly, we're trying to identify the KPIs that are likely to have a big effect on the predictive model. And secondly, we are trying to work out whether or not we can even make a good prediction. So here you can see that there are 2 KPIs that appear to have quite strong correlation with the future health score. So this suggests that they've got good correlation, we can make a good prediction. If we didn't have any strong KPIs, if we didn't have any medium strength correlation KPIs, there'd be a recommendation here that says none of your KPIs have good correlation. You probably won't be able to generate a good predictive model for this particular service. But in this case, we found a couple of KPIs that do have good correlation, so we can move on to training some predictive models. And on this particular dashboard, you've got a couple of options. You can pick the time period you want to run the predictive model against, and you can also select the fields that you want to use for model training. By default, in ITSI today, every single KPI will be used to make the prediction. Whereas here, we're saying we're just going to use the recommended ones, i.e. we're just going to use those that have medium or strong correlation with the future health score. So we're trying to do some intelligent feature selection here. And you can either use all of them or just the recommended set. But once you've trained them, you'll get a dashboard here that shows you, for all of the algorithms we've tried, how accurate they were. And in this case, they've all done a pretty good job. We'll also get an assessment in plain English about the performance of that algorithm. So you could have one at the top that is still poor. And at that point you'd say, okay, well, we've trained a set of algorithms, we thought we were going to get a good predictive model, but actually it's saying we're not doing very well, so let's not run it in production. In this case, they're all running pretty well, and the gradient boosting regressor looks like it's the best one for the job. So this is the one that I would choose to productionize. So that's the workflow for predictive. The other piece that I mentioned before was around smart mode and event aggregation. And in the ITSI Insights app for Splunk, what we've tried to do is run a piece of analysis over the service tree to detect similar services based on their overall connection in your infrastructure. So here we can see we've got authorization, on-prem database, and external authentication services all being grouped together by this algorithm, whereas the other kind of front-end services are all kind of being lumped in another group. Over here we've got a separate tree structure, the shared IT infrastructure, where we've got a few areas around SMTP, we've got a few areas around networking, we've got a few areas around VMware, that have all been identified by this algorithm as being relatively similar. And what we can do with this information is we can start to generate episodes that are more aware of blast radius type analysis. So in other words, if I start to see alerts being generated against some of the more back-end SMTP infrastructure, I could choose to group that under the same umbrella as everything else. So that if I see a degradation here, it should affect this entire set of services as far as an episode is concerned. So we can enrich our data using these labels, we can enrich our alerts, and once they're enriched, that means we can generate episodes where this community label is being intelligently used to separate out some of our episodes. Okay. Lots more details around this algorithm in some additional content that I will mention in a moment. But the final piece that we looked at was root cause analysis. So how can you more easily identify the KPIs that are having the biggest effect on your episodes around the time of that episode? So we've got a list of episodes here. I've clicked on this one. There's now an analytic that's running in the background that is trying to identify the KPIs that are having the most impact on the authorization service health score. And that will generate a couple of things. So the first one is a tabular view that shows you for the services that are affected in that episode. In our case, we've only got the one. Here are the KPIs that are having the biggest impact on it. And we could click on that and we could go into the deep dive review, which I'll do in a moment. The other thing we can see here is essentially a kind of root cause effect chart that shows you that for all of the KPIs, for all of the service health scores related to authorization, what the cause and effect relationships look like. So here we can see CPU utilization looks like it's affected by 4x error count, request count, active sessions, and average transaction response time. And the bit that we care about is the service health score, which shows us these two KPIs that are up in the table here. But we could further follow that back and see, well, actually, for the 4x errors count, that's affected by the transaction response time, which is affected by the end user response time, and start to do even more detailed root cause analysis. In this case, I'm simply going to click on the table, and that's going to take me to a deep dive review that shows me around the time of this episode what the KPIs look like. And I can see here that actually it looks like end user response time is the biggest factor just by looking at the adaptive thresholding color coding that I can see here. This looks like the KPI that's having the biggest impact on this particular episode. Okay. So that's it for the demo. Before we wrap up, there are some additional resources available if you want to continue exploring these types of capabilities. There's a series of blog posts, and there's also a YouTube video that goes through in a bit more detail some of what we've shown today. We will also be exploring some additional ways of trying out some of these techniques using Smile, the Splunk machine learning environments. And keep your eyes peeled for that coming out in the next few weeks and months. Finally, there's a whole host of additional resources out there, particularly in our active community pages. So check out our Splunk Answers for any ITSI content. There's certainly a lot more discussion around IT use cases in our Tech Talk series, so please check that out. And finally, if you've got ideas for new features or functionality in our IT portfolio, feel free to go to our ideas portal and submit some of your suggestions. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate you taking the time to check in for this session. And stay posted for future updates on how you can get more value from ITSI or more value from your IT monitoring through these Tech Talks. Thanks, everyone.